I call this meeting of Southwest Licking Local School District Board of Education to order. It is Thursday, April 21st at 7 p.m. in the Board of Education meeting room. I'd like to recognize all of our visitors here in the room, as well as those watching online. If everyone would please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
This is Mr. Westbrook's third period social studies class.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Jones, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Engel,
Here.
Mrs. Moore,
Here.
Mr. Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Zani,
Here.
Mrs. Spindler.
Here. Public participation, we have Mr. Ford. And just as a reminder, when you approach the podium to state your name and address, and Mr. Jones will keep time. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Corey Ford, and I reside in the district at 701 Osborne Drive, Pataskala, Ohio. You'll have to forgive me when I wrote my words down for this evening. I was only under the impression that we were considering contract addendums for the superintendent, and so I will ad-lib a few more words for the district treasurer's addendum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm here to address the board this evening about agenda items 7, J, and K, and I plan to be brief. As these items are in consent items and often approved en masse without discussion, I felt it pertinent to add some thoughts. Our superintendent started a role in January of 2020. At that time, our last state report card for the district was 2018-2019, and it showed an opportunity for growth. We achieved a D for preparing students for success. We achieved a D for improving at-risk third graders, which was awarded at a measly 28.6%. Due to COVID and changes in Ohio law, we were not rated for 2020 and 2021 school years. We have no feedback from the state to assess whether our district is doing better or worse or the same as the first day our superintendent started. There is a group established by House Bill 82 that is working on a new number grading scale for the school report cards, and they're expected to be released this October for the 2021-2022 school year. This October, we may finally know if the superintendent's leadership has been a net positive or a net negative for our district. Despite this tonight on the agenda are addendums to contracts to remove performance-based pay and lock in a guaranteed 3% increase raise, the maximum offered under the current grading scale annually, despite not having a state report card. Also on the agenda tonight is a 5-year contract to begin August of next year that also curiously does not include performance-based merit increases. As a parent, I gotta ask, why is it that we wouldn't want to have merit increases tied to the success of our students? Not just this year while we haven't received a report card for the district, but until 2028. The 5-year contract must not be considered until we get solid feedback that a layman parent and community member can read. Regarding the treasurer's contract, it has language to state that if we are under a fiscal warning or fiscal insolvency or budget cuts, that we need to have the treasurer's permission to not give the treasurer a 3% raise. If we're in those positions, it's likely due to the treasurer's actions. It doesn't make sense to me. If the superintendent and treasurer wants a guaranteed 3% annual merit increase, we can keep it, as long as we consider a formula that subtracts from it the unemployment rate of our high school graduates that don't move on to college or trade schools. Remember, we got a D for preparing students for success. Members of the board, I have 2 rhetorical questions for you to think about as we move down the agenda this evening. It may be understandable for a superintendent or a treasurer to want to remove merit-based increases, given the fact that feedback is hard to come by. If not having a state report card or current financial documents don't influence last merit increases, why remove it? Why remove it for the next 6 years? What does that say about our expectations for the next state report card or the next audit? Lastly, there will be another election before the middle of 2028. Do you really want to remove an effective check and balance on the superintendent and treasurer for the next 6 years? How are you going to square that with the voters if it doesn't work out? Currently in Ohio and around the U.S., there's a public conversation raging. Teachers' unions and academic institutions want to protect children from possible abuses by destigmatizing sexual orientation, gender expression, and systemic inequities. Parents are showing up to school boards and lobbying legislators to protect parents' rights. It's a tough time to be on the school board. You may want to try and keep control. The 5-year contract is not started until we get a state report card. I recommend against removing the tie between our children's success and their wallet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item F, 1F, adoption of the agenda.
Motion to adopt. Second?
Any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes, that passes. A couple presentations. 2A, non-transport zones.
Ryan's he's actually gonna present
Oh, yeah.
that in a moment.
Would you like to skip to 2B?
No, he's here.
Are we ready?
No.
Yeah.
No,
There he is.
Tam's gonna help facilitate pointing at sections, so.
Hey, good evening, school board members and those watching online. My name is Ryan Brown. I'm the logistics director over top of transportation and our digital academy. Tonight I'm going to be speaking from our transportation department, and we're going to be talking about non-transport zones. Mr. Tancheski, if you could go ahead and move to the next slide. Why non-transport zones now? Our buses are overcrowded. Our buses seat 72 passengers, and so elementary, a lot of our buses are pushing that 72 number. That's 3 to a seat in our elementary buses. High school, middle school, we like to only keep those buses at 48. That's 2 to a seat. Unfortunately, right now, many of our high school, middle school routes are more than 48, and so drivers are having to find smaller middle schoolers to sit with potentially high schoolers, 3 to a seat, so that we can get students to and from school safely. And it's a real concern, and that's as we stand right now. And I'm gonna get down to number 4, but we're overcrowded right now. Number 2, uniformity. Kirkersville and Pataskala, they have had non-transport zones for years now. And at this time, I feel Etna, our intermediate school, our high school, and our middle school have safe areas that we can move to non-transport as well. This will enable us to better utilize our existing resources. We'll be able to take some of our drivers who are busing students who are within a non-transport zone. We'll be able to move those to some of our overcrowded areas that are further out, and maybe lessen how full those buses are so that students aren't, especially high school, middle school, so that students aren't sitting 3 to a seat. And then we need to prepare for growth. Back in May of last school year, we had a firm do a study on our growth that's coming. The next slide, if you could go ahead and slide to it, shows that growth. And so these are all the developments that are coming down towards our school district in the near future. If you look at the very bottom of it, I only grabbed 2 of those developments. Both of them are called the I-70 development, and that's the 299 apartment units and the 766 single-family homes that are considered that I-70 development. I looked at those numbers alone, and then you see, if that data is 100% correct, that is more than 5 bus routes for K to 5th grade, kindergartner through 5th grade in there, and that's more than 9 buses for 6th through 12th. If it's only 50% right, it's only 2 buses and only 4, but those are routes I currently do not have the manpower for. And so that's just 2 of the developments that are up there. we have to begin preparing for all of those developments and all the growth that's coming. And so that's one of the reasons for this proposal. Next slide, Dan. When would it begin? If the school board would approve it, it would begin next school year. Next one. Ohio Revised Code talks about transportation of pupils. We're required to transport resident school pupils in grades kindergarten through 8th grade that live more than 2 miles from their assigned school. And so to better clarify what that means is, if a student is assigned to Etna Elementary School, the state is saying if a student lives outside of 2 miles from Etna Elementary, the school district must transport them. I am not suggesting that we move to 2 miles. I'm just clearly putting out there that this is the state minimum. The state minimum is anybody outside of 2 miles. Next slide, Tan. I grabbed the schools around us and what their current non-transportation zones are. And you see Granville's currently a half mile, Heath is a half mile, Johnstown is greater than a mile. New Albany schools for middle school and high school, they are at the state minimum, 2 miles. Newark City schools is 1 mile for elementary students, 1.5 miles for 6 through 8, and they do not offer transportation currently for high school students. Back in Ohio Revised Code, there is no mention of high school students. Per Ohio Revised Code, high school students do not have to be transported. North Folk is 1 mile, Olentangy's 1 mile, Pickerington and Reynoldsburg all are approximately 1 mile from their assigned school. So then what would my proposal be? You're looking at a map, and so I'm going to go building by building. On the left-hand side of every slide, the big circle is the 2 mile radius. That would be the state minimum. The little circle inside of that represents a half mile from the school. And then the slide on the right in the red portion would be what I would consider the non-transport zone. It would be for K through 3, and this is Etna Elementary. And so this would encompass Cumberland Crossing and Trails East, because both of those areas have sidewalks that can get to Etna campus. They also, Trails East, we have a crossing guard. There is a crosswalk. It will mean that all the schools that already have language to provide and pay for a crossing guard, it will mean that all the buildings will begin utilizing that and having crossing guards. So this is Etna Elementary. Go ahead into the next slide. This would be Kirkersville. As I stated in the beginning, Kirkersville has had one long-standing. The only addition to this would be just north of Kirkersville Elementary is an apartment complex. That apartment complex would now be added to it, and that had not been in the past. But, everything else in Kirkersville, they have been not transported for many years at this time. Next slide is Pataskala. So Pataskala's around Pataskala Elementary, south of the railroad tracks. So we're still not going to go north of the railroad tracks. The old walk zone was at 310, and so it was everything west of 310. I'm proposing we add the development just to the east of 310. And my reasoning for that is 310 has a extremely well-lit crossing guard, crosswalk with blinking lights, and like I stated, we would utilize a crossing guard at that intersection. Next slide. I think it's probably the easiest of the group. It's the smallest. This would be the intermediate school and the high school because the buildings are sitting out in quite the open field. There isn't much around them other than Willowbrook Terrace, which is the mobile home park. They would be included in the walk zone. And that would be for 4th and 5th graders and then high schoolers. And then the last slide of the pictures is the middle school. The middle school would include the development to the north,
Watkins
which is
Grove.
Sterling Way. It would also include then the development to the south, Long Hollow,
Longwood Crossing.
Willowbrook Terrace, the mobile park, and then the developments on the east side of Watkins Road as well. I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide. This slide shows, and this is a little bit predictive. We took and rolled our current students forward into next school year. This is the data that came back. Just keep in mind, this does not include kindergartners because our kindergartners are not fully registered yet for next school year. And so everything in the yellow, the highlighted, would be students that now would not be transported to their school. And then the bottom gives an example of how many routes that would save. You see at the elementary, it would save just over 2 routes. At the middle school and the high school, it would save almost 5 routes if we move to these non-transport zones. And like I stated, those routes would then just be used to help growth in other areas of our school district. One that I've talked about many times is up in the northeast corner of our district. It's Manassas and Ellington. I think it's called Ellington Village. That development is growing quickly. And it already has 1 bus that goes to it. That bus has gotten to a point where it only does that neighborhood for the most part. And I'm concerned as the rest of this year progresses that next school year we'll have to send 2 buses, and it is the furthest northeast part of our school district. And so that'd be an example of an area that I don't currently have an extra route available. This would enable me to send that extra bus up there to make it so those buses aren't as crowded. Last slide, I think. What would be next? If the board would approve this, we would begin communicating. As soon as this is approved, I would like to start communicating with parents and let them know that their child falls within a non-transport zone so they can begin preparing for August and beginning of school. I don't want that to be a last second thing for our parents. I want them to know as soon as possible so they can make plans. I also know that we're going to need to start working with Pataskala, Kirkersville, and our sheriff's department to make them aware that more students are going to be walking so that they can help and be more visible in those areas during the morning and afternoon when our students are out. Number 3, I want to make sure that crossing guard positions are filled and ready to go for that first day of school. So the earlier this gets done, the quicker we can get those people approved and trained so that they are ready. And then finally, I don't think this is a one-time vote. I think this is a process that we're going to have to continue year in and year out as our district continues to change and grow. I think we're going to have to work as a team to make sure that we're checking to see that it is effective and that it is doing what it needs to do to make sure that we can continue to keep our students, getting our students safely to school, but safely and in a timely manner. So with that, I'll field any questions that anybody might have, and or if Dr. Perkins, if I've missed anything.
We can go with some questions first and then say put Ryan up there, perfect.
Going to the Etna map, I saw Trail East is non-transport. I was just curious if you could explain why Trail West cannot be.
Exactly. That was my question.
Do you want, Ryan, do you want that, do you guys want the map back up or do you
Yeah.
want Ryan or what?
I don't need it,
Okay, I
but
just wanna make sure. And you have them here too.
yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Because didn't we discuss a path, or there's a path, or there's not a path?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, so Trails West, Trails West is north of the golf course. And so as of right now, there is no path that either the public or the school district owns that could safely get those kids from Trails West to our campus. Whereas Trails East and Cumberland Crossing both have sidewalks and or a crosswalk to get them to our campus. I would love for Trails West to put a path. There's a court in the back that I believe backs up close to our property. I would love for us to be able to reach out to the developer and see if we can put in a path. Then I would change my recommendation, but right now, that is why. They would have to cross the golf course and then multiple private properties to get to our campus.
Okay, and then my only other question was, because I'm sure parents are going to want to know this, the Kirk kids, next year when they go to what is now the present-day middle school, they will be transported then, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's a great question. I apologize, I didn't hit on it. So Kirkersville, whenever we make the decision that we're moving kids, that's part of I'm gonna have to work with the village of Kirkersville and the community itself. We will need to find a, for lack of a better term, a rally point or a pickup point. And so we would create a bus stop where the students that are in that non-transport zone in Kirkersville, they would walk to that bus stop. They would board the bus, and then the bus would take them to the middle school, soon to be Kirkersville Elementary temporarily.
All right, thank you.
Ryan, I got a question on Etna also. How
Yes.
come we have not extended it up to the pond?
On Trail East.
Trail
right?
East, yeah, I'm sorry, on Trail East.
Basically getting the front end of
Yes.
Cumberland Trail.
You would have to, I'm sorry, you'll have to show me where you mean on the map, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to get up there? Can you see it if I do that or not?
They mean the part with like Runkle, Dellenball.
Yeah, up to the
Oh.
east. No, yeah, the east.
Oh,
East.
Towards
Go east.
310,
Yes, towards
Yes.
310.
towards 310.
Okay, loopy.
And so in our multiple conversations, we just decided at this time that was going to be a smidge further of a walk. It is, I'm not opposed to extending it that far for kindergarten through third grade. But we just have to keep in mind that the non-transport zones would be, because Etna Elementary is only for kindergartner through third grade, we would be extending that non-transport zone for kindergarten through third graders.
And you'd be cutting off a house in the middle of a street. Like, so you have if you look there on where the line is for 2 miles, if you lived on Runkle and you lived on the inside of the line, your house has non-transport, but you live on the outside, you're at outside 2 miles.
No,
That's half a
no,
mile.
That's
no,
half-
that's half
That's
a
half a
mile.
mile.
Oh, I'm
2
sorry.
miles is way over here.
I personally.
My bad.
I mean,
Go ahead, I was gonna say something.
no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When I saw the original map, I had a concern about it extending all the way to 310. To me, that's too long of a distance for K3. I was kind of a big proponent of carving it out the way it's carved out now. That was my concern that I brought to them. And then this apparently is the recommendation they're making tonight.
Here's my only thought with that. If I live in Cumberland Trail, so here's what I'm going to say. If I live out here on this house, and the people in here are walking, and the people in here are on a bus, I'm going to say, why can't I come over here and get on this bus, and I can ride to school? Why can't I walk why can't I step 2 houses down and get on the bus?
Well, and another thought was,
Right?
Instead of dividing up that neighborhood like that, where the transition would be pretty much right before the condos. So you kind of have a natural break as the houses, to the right of the condos are, bust, and then everything in the front part is walking. It just seemed like a nice natural place. But again, I don't think we're necessarily opposed to adding on. I do think, through conversations, the concern became what, Candy's talking about, and on top of that, where do you draw that line? It just was a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I just think as a neighborhood, if you say, I live in the neighborhood and my neighbor's kid gets to ride the bus and my kid doesn't, well then I'm gonna, hey, how about if I come over to your house and we'll get on the bus together? That's all I'm saying.
I would advocate to add that in.
To where, to which?
The
Add
neighborhood.
Add the
up to the pond.
entire
Up to the
neighborhood.
pond.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're gonna.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Deb and Candy, you're suggesting moving it all the way out to 310.
Yes.
Well, it's not out to 310.
Yeah.
It's out to the front of Cumberland Trail.
Yeah, because you got, what, a good quarter mile of pond and extension, if
And the
not more.
bank and all of that at the
Right.
front.
I
Right.
don't know. I'm just not a big fan of, that is a decent walk for K through 3. I'm not opposed, or I'm not in favor of extending it out.
Which brings, I'm just going to add something here because it was going to be my question anyway, but it brings me to, this conversation brings me to my question, and that is, I have a feeling the majority of these K3s, if they're in a non-transport zone, aren't walking. They're going to be driven to their
Correct.
school by mom or dad or babysitter.
Correct.
So my question then becomes, have we talked to, or are we planning to talk to, we already have issues with parent drop-offs at all the schools and traffic. This is going to, in my just idea is it's going to double that. I have a feeling, maybe not double,
Yeah, I don't
but
think
it's
so.
going to, I think we'll see an increase, so I don't know if we're looking at those things to like, I just want to make sure we're looking at that, especially with the current middle school situation with the drop-off pickup. That are we looking at those traffic patterns if they need adjusted, or drop-off times versus bus drop-off times? And plus, we will have additional kids walking, and so there's going to be people everywhere. So I'm just, my concern is are we looking at that, I guess?
I mean, yes, we will have to look at all of that. I think it's hard to probably effectively predict who's going to walk in groups, who's going to carpool, who's going to drive their own child, to know exactly how that's going to play out. But I do know what we did say, or what I specifically said was, the contract doesn't say you're limited to one crossing guard. So we're going to effectively make sure we put in place safety measures for the kids crossing to safely be there. And I think all the schools do a really good job with that. But that will be an addition that we'll add. And I think we're going to have to see, I mean, the middle school is a great example. A lot of those kids should be on school buses, and they're just being dropped off. So there's an example of they could ride the school bus, and their parents are choosing to bring them to school, hence creating part of our traffic issue. So it's really hard to know what parents are going to choose given the situation.
Yeah, I know. I
do think more will drive them than walk, especially with the K1, unless they have a buddy to walk with, or
An
hopefully
older
there'll be some
sibling or.
carpooling and, sibling. But that's absolutely, yes, we will.
I guess it's
be looking at
my
that.
comment is more just like I think that may end up being something we need to
I agree.
to look at next year once we know. But I do think that, yes, to John's point and to Candy's point, I don't think mom or
Right.
dad of 5-year-old is going to have them. They'll probably drop them off, but you'd never know. You know, there could be one or two. I don't know. This is not.
I also look at it from the perspective of, like, if we look at our circles here, this is de facto half a mile. That's pretty much going to be our district policy, is half a mile. And for the elementaries, this is the only elementary that has a portion that then would not be within that half mile. All the other elementaries, everything within the non-transport zone is within that half mile. But this one is not. And, I'm sorry if it cuts off a neighborhood. My neighborhood's divided between 2 school districts, Northridge and Southwest Licking. So, I mean, it is as it is. I think for uniformity's sake as well, with that area on Trail East and Runkle and all that being out of that half a mile, I don't know how you explain to that parent, well, yeah, you live further than a half a mile away from the school, and every other place in the district, if they live within a half a mile, you get to be or if you live outside of that half a mile, you get to be transported. But for whatever reason, your street is the only one in the whole district you can't.
The middle school's that way too.
I'm
John.
talking elementary though.
Oh, okay.
So that's just I think for consistency's sake, if we make it a half mile, then it just needs to be a half mile, but that's,
Isn't that circle a half a mile?
Yeah.
Well, the part
But when you
right there
add
outside
in
of
all
Rumpel on
of Cumberland,
down
it's
Trail East,
outside.
there is a little bit right
you see Ohio mulch,
to the right, Tam. Right, keep going. Right.
that's the
Right.
area I'm talking
So that's outside the half mile. And
But
that's,
that had a crossing issue, right?
no, that's still within the neighborhood. It's just outside the half mile.
That's
Okay.
what's being
So
proposed
that's
to be
what,
added.
so that's what John's referring to.
So John, you're advocating that we kind of go for the half mile?
Yeah, I think if you look at
So
the,
that would include the one that I was talking about,
Yeah,
right?
so are you asking
It
to
would,
go
but
out
my
to the
point
circle or
was,
to
are you
keep the
gonna
red
cut
lines?
house
I'm
next door
asking
neighbors
to
in
keep,
half?
I'm asking to keep the red line. I think that's a fair barrier. However, if, we had to go out to whatever this little intersection is to make it within our boundary, then so be it. But I am of the opinion, anything that's outside of this would be the only area the only area that's further than a half mile that would have no transportation. That's my thing.
This is agenda item down to vote on this, so. obviously-
I'm okay with the half mile. Because then that would take, and like, John, like you said, it would kind of give people and I understand, Kathy, what you're saying too, but it would give people an idea of, if you're within that circle, unless there's an issue of crossing or like in other situations, the railroad tracks, things like that, we're not going to include that, but all of that is within a half a mile.
Correct, but.
Except
then-
out here on this end, where we're getting the rest of this neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, that too, yeah. So that's
And
more,
then to Candy's point, though, you're gonna have all the people that live on the outside of that get a babysitter on the inside, and they're just gonna.
Yeah. Yep. Because that's what I would do. I'd say my kid's staying
or
at
they're
this
gonna get a
people's house.
babysitter on the outside, I guess
Yeah.
is what I meant.
That's what I'd say. I'm sorry, my kid stays at these people's houses in the mornings.
Roger, what do you think?
Well, I'm just thinking.
That's where my kids' pickup is in the mornings.
To me, it's kind of hard
Right.
to tell from this picture what the walking path is like. Are they sidewalks all
Sidewalks.
the way through there?
Yeah, sidewalks.
So they at least have sidewalks. I don't know, I'm just thinking if I had
I
a
see both
5-year-old and sending them off in the morning to walk that far, would I want to do that? Probably I would drive them, but yeah, I'm okay with the way it's pictured right now. And then we can review it somewhere down the road if it, if it doesn't work, but I'm kind of like John, I think that's a long ways for a little, and we have to think of the worst case scenario, a 5-year-old walking all that way with unsupervised, travel. And what's best for kids? Well, that's not what's best for kids, so I don't have a problem with the way it's pictured right now. And look at it down the road, I guess, if we need to. That's my thoughts.
I see both sides, so I'm.
I kind of like the philosophy of the half mile. I don't know why that's hitting me, but it's kind of, I guess not as arbitrary.
But then what do you do about that back corner?
Right.
All right. This was just the presentation, right?
Yeah, we
Yes.
don't vote on
It
this
is
till
on, it's
later.
an item on there later to vote on, but.
Okay.
You could.
Oh, that's nice. That's the condos. Pebble Creek is the condos.
Go. Hey, go back to that. Go back to the original map, John.
So what I zoomed in on is that kind of triangle shaped corner down there on the bottom.
outside? Oh, right there, right there. Yeah.
I was referring
you-
to the other side triangle. If we're going to,
Right.
if we're going to set a half-mile period, you've got this other tiny corner right there that
If-
you have to deal with as well.
Okay, and I know that Ryan probably worked really hard on this, but if you shift just a smidgy to get your half mile on that corner, are you losing anything a whole lot on
Well,
the top? Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but moving the circle,
Yeah,
but then you'd be moving the actual distance, 'cause that's a measurement.
you'd be moving
From the
what?
center.
That's
You-
a measurement.
Oh, from
You
the
can,
school.
you can see, there's a white dot
Yeah.
right in
Yeah,
the center.
Yeah, gotcha. Never mind. Yeah, it's from the half mile from the school. Never mind. That was dumb.
Yes.
Thank you. I was thinking full circle.
Ryan, roughly
Well, that
how
white
many
lot- that
houses
white
are
dot could go over the
outside of
building
that
if you
half
shifted
mile
that much. You
in
could catch it
the
probably.
existing
Yeah,
drawing
could it
that
be
you
a
have?
different place in the school? That's right.
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm sorry.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, it looks like roughly about 10.
What did you ask? How many houses?
That's
What?
outside of the half mile,
Looks like more than
you think?
10. In that development, they are
Yeah,
close together.
Maybe 17?
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say maybe 16. It looks like it's 8 on this one side.
Which, I mean, it's,
Oh, It's a lot.
I also have no idea right this second if there are even students in those 17 houses. So I don't know,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that.
it's a lot. Okay, so we beat that to death.
I'm kind of for extending the half mile.
Do we need more discussion?
No.
Well, we get to the agenda item, you can probably have more discussion
Okay.
then, yeah.
All right.
You guys need Ryan, or can we let him go? Are
I
you done
think
with him?
Can we let Mr.
Or
Brown?
do you,
We're good.
you're good? Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Item 2B, Mr. Mumford with the Watkins Athletic Association has a presentation for us regarding the concession stand.
Did you guys get, I copied the Garmin Miller quote
I
and
don't.
sent it with,
No,
that came
it's
across
okay.
for you guys. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I can talk you through it.
okay.
I'm Jason Mumford. I met a lot of you. I've seen you in concession stands or in meetings or somewhere along the way, but I'm with the Athletic Boosters. What we're going to talk about is, and what we've been talking about is most of our revenue for the boosters, which then transitions to the kids, comes through our concession stand, our main concession stand at the stadium. That concession stand was built in 1990. If you go in there, you'll find that I have rigged up a lot of different electrical ways to keep things running. It's past its usage. Also, we built the beautiful locker rooms last year, and our concession stand used to house the bathrooms, both men's and women's. So that's no longer needed. And we just thought it would be a good time to look at remodeling, if you would. We wouldn't be changing the footprint. In fact, what we would like to do is essentially just gut the inside, get the bathrooms out of there. We have those storage containers on the backside. We would really like to get rid of those. Tan would really like us to get rid of those as well. And what we were looking at is painting it to match the current locker rooms. We talked to Mr. Southkirk with Garmin Miller. I don't think it would be feasible for us to actually match the brick. That would entail a lot of money, from my understanding. So we'll get some really nice paint that, as my father used to always say, from the highway, it'll look perfect. And then we would match the roofing, the metal roofing. So it would kind of all blend in. That's our goal. What we're talking of doing is we presented it twice at our booster meeting. Anything over $2,000 has to be presented at our booster meetings twice. We got cleared both of those. So then I thought it would come to you guys just to kind of update you, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions before we turn over to Garmin Miller to start the process. Their plan is to do the drawings. Also, they would work at kind of, I guess, a little bit like the general contractor in that they would put out for the bids and those type of things. It was the most, we had a couple different companies come out. It was the most complete for us. I mean, all of us have other jobs besides and one of us running the project would probably not go well. I volunteered Jen, but she didn't want to do it. So is there any questions or anything I could answer for you guys? The process, after he does the drawings, I'm sure we'll work on all that. Our plan would be, we're not going to do anything. We don't have the timeline to get it done before August. We have to be open. That's where the majority of our revenue comes from, is during football and that cross-country event and those type of things. So our plan would be is we would start destruction, I guess, or the tearing out of the inside right after the last home football game, which we're probably looking around November for that. And then once that process starts, as the weather changes or whatever Kurt says is the best to go, we'll start the building process of. What we're looking at is we'll rerun the electricity. That's the key. That's the biggest thing, to make sure we have things that were 30 years ago. We have a lot more things are running on electricity now. And then we're going to redesign the layout using the folks that have been in there for years and years and years to kind of maximize. As you know, volunteers are hard to come by. I mean, we have a lot of great ones, but some nights it's kind of difficult. So if we can just streamline the process so we can serve the customers that are fans there and make that process go as smoothly as possible. That's what we're looking for. And then also to kind of clean up the outside. When you're over there, I mean, everything's looking so nice over there. We're trying to just kind of clean up the process and get rid of those containers and make it a little more appealing. Any questions that I can answer for you guys?
I just know that your goals are to give money back to our kids, and you guys do as much as you can. So
yeah, we hate spending the money on. I mean, this is like one of those things where you raise the money, and the goal is to provide for all the student athletes and anything we can do to help them. But then you have to kind of sit back and realize that's where the money comes from. And as we know, Johnstown had an issue several years ago where one of their buildings burnt down, and when you start talking with electricity and things plugged in and extension cords running across, it just you just kind of hold your breath sometimes. So we want to get ahead of the process.
So are you guys looking then at funding the whole thing? Are you looking to come to the board to partner, or
we're going to take care of this first part?
Okay.
And then, because we really don't know what it's going to cost. Mike's been helping us a lot with looking at different options. But anyone you talk to, and I'm sure Kurt will say the same thing, is they need to see plans. If they don't see plans, they don't know what it's going to cost to do. So I think once we get the plans underway, then we start getting an idea of what it's going to cost. You may see my smiling face wondering if you guys wanted to chip in a little bit, but we also have other options that we're going down. It's not we're going to lump it on you and hey, no pressure, but if you can't help us, then it's we know that we kind of have to drive things ourselves too. So our goal is to see where we're at and go from there. If you guys are able to help, great. If you're not, then it's like anything else. We'll find a way to get things done.
So can we invite you back to show us plans when they're done?
Absolutely, and that's actually on one of Kurt's proposal was that we'll keep you updated through once the plans are done. I mean, my thing is I'll come to you guys at every step just to kind of let you know what's going on, where we're at. I mean, it is your facility. I mean, it's we're just kind of you're letting us be squatters there and use the stuff, but it's your area there. So absolutely, And any feedback, you know, I know many of you have my number, so please, I mean, you're welcome to call me if you have questions or anything like that. I'm easily to get a hold of, and if I don't know the answer, then I'll try to do my best to find it. So, okay. Any additional questions?
I
And
don't
again,
think so.
if you think of something, please let me know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. Request to speak on agenda items from Teamsters or Southwest Licking Education Association. All right. Item 4, approval of minutes. We have 3. I need a motion for one or all.
I motion approval for A through C.
Second?
Any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. Item 5, financial report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Cool on the agenda is the executive summary for March 31st. We received our final property tax settlement for the year. It came in about $333,000 higher than we anticipated, but we were $200,000 short last half of 2021. So year to date, we're about $105,000 higher than we anticipated being property tax wise. So that's all good. State sources, everything else. We're doing really well. So we're about 4% higher in revenue than we anticipated being, and expenditures are 3% lower than we anticipated. So we're running about $2.6 million ahead of where we anticipated being at this time. So, which is a good thing with getting close to finishing up here. I'm glad to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. All right, item 6, executive session if we need it for so if there's not a motion, do we just skip
Yep,
to
just
7?
move on, yep.
Okay. Item 7, personnel consent calendar. We have A through L. We can take them all, or we can take them separately or in chunks.
Motion to approve 7A through L.
Second.
Any discussion?
I did want to point out, we have 18 new hires on here.
Yeah.
So it's been a really busy month, but I'm very, very excited at some of the new teachers and some new to education and others coming from other places. So they're going to bring a lot to our team. So that's awesome. There will be more coming as well, but that's a big chunk.
I also noticed there was a lot of internal staff that participated with the wellness.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was exciting
That was
to
nice.
see all those names.
Yeah, that was a really good day too. We had a lot of staff doing a lot of different things, and some other names that aren't on there either that are foregoing money for whatever reason, but that helped out too. So it was a great day.
Any other discussion?
I saw another 2 years for Mr. Janelle, and I think that we appreciate him staying with us
Yes,
for another
I
2
very
years.
much
I think
appreciate. I very much appreciate having him.
I was
oversee
trying to
the
get him sweating a
projects.
little bit today. They told him the executive session was for him. Just so you know.
Yeah, we definitely could not be doing this size of a project without
Absolutely.
Bob. He's,
Not like we aren't building.
yeah.
I
Right.
went out with him yesterday morning to check out the new middle school, and it's amazing how far we've gotten. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's just amazing. And you know, I couldn't imagine not having somebody to do that, because I couldn't see running a school district and doing. There's just no way.
No, that's
So-
pretty much, even though he's not a year-round employee, he works a lot. beyond what he's supposed to work. So to make sure it's being done right and effectively. So yeah. Appreciative to have him another 2 years.
And I will say that I appreciate Mrs. Spindler's work in our contract negotiations with our superintendent and our superintendent for an additional 5 years, because we had some extraordinary work during some very extraordinary times.
Thank you.
And you are doing a phenomenal job, and we may or may not see feedback on paper, and whether or not we see that or not, we see that. So thank you very much.
I would just add too, it's a stressful time in education.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And it is hard with people, teachers leaving the profession, and it's hard right now in education to find people to fill roles. And, I appreciate the work that you both are doing,
Absolutely. You too,
and
Mr. Jones.
appreciate the fact that you were wanting to stick with this organization and keep moving us forward.
Thank you.
Well, and the fact that we've got over 20 teachers that are coming here, that's just phenomenal. I mean, that's amazing. I see some with some extended education. I mean, it's years' experience.
And we got some walk-ins grads in there as well.
We got some walk-ins grads in there as well that will be lifelong probably here.
Hey, okay. Mr. Jones.
Mrs. Engel,
Are you crying?
Yes.
No.
Mr. Vincent,
You guys
Yes.
said everything.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes, that passes. 8A,
Motion approval 8A.
I can second that. Any discussion?
He's already subbed today, so. And he said he'll come back, so.
There you go.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes. Oh, no, I have to abstain, sorry.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes, that's a no.
Mr. Zani.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. 9, business items. 9A, discussion on new K-3 building.
So I'm going to ask Garwin and Miller to come up here and join us. Rick and I asked them to be here tonight to unfortunately share some
Oh, boy.
frustrating, that's the word I'll use, frustrating news, and I thought it was important that the board hear from them directly to understand kind of what's going on. They're going to share some things, and then Rick and I will come back with some thoughts, and we're probably going to have to digest a little bit and come back in May and make some decisions. So take it away.
Well, good evening. We've been through many projects together, and you've heard us use our different language of schematic design and value engineering and cost estimating and all that. So at the K3, we're at the early stage of schematic design. This is the first time that we have a cost estimate that's done by a consultant that we use on all of our projects. And unfortunately, we are quite a bit over budget with the design that we have. And the budget is based on not only the OFCC numbers, but also the district added money to the project early on in schematic design to try to address enrollment increases and have the new building be consistent with the other new buildings, that type of thing. So where we are right now, again, unfortunately, is that the construction market is really volatile. There's a lot of lead time issues, there's increased costs. You know, everything is a commodity, everything is based on supply and demand. And we're seeing this on a number of our projects that we're working on. So it's not just an isolated incident, it's really something that we are experiencing statewide. So again, you've heard us use the term value engineering, where we look at every space in the building as far as the size, the square footage, the volume, the materials, all that. And on the other projects, we've been able to, even though it's not been painless, we've been able to move forward with our projects. Unfortunately, we're seeing this approximately 25% increase across the board on pricing. And so we have to do more than just our standard value engineering. So,
Quite a bit is $8 million
Yeah.
over budget.
Wow.
Almost 33%, 30% over budget, so. And that's including the extra $3 million we put in to take it to 800 kids. Because it was a $24 million budget, and we added 3 more
Right?
to get it to 800. So at 800, we're $8 million over budget.
So do that again. So it was at 24 million. You added 3 million to make it 27, and then now it's the budget-
35.
35. Okay. I wanted to put it in actual numbers. So
Yeah, so it's coming at 35 million.
35 million.
So there are some things that we can do, and Kurt and Eric can share about that will save a little bit of money, and I do want them to share some of those ideas with you. But we're gonna have to talk once they're done sharing about some other ideas, because it's not going to decrease it by $8 million, not even close. So maybe we can start there if you want to share like some things that we can look at, so they have kind of an idea, and then I can talk to them about next steps.
again, the value engineering process is, I started to mention the square footage. So OFCC has classroom sizes of what is the standard, but then you can also reduce those to, it's 900 square foot classroom is typical. You can go down to 810, and we're close to that already, which is what we did at the 4-5 in the high school. Again, the volumes, the heights of anything, we want to make sure that we're at the minimum that you need for the gym, for example, needs to be a certain height for the design manual from the OFCC. There's also materials that we can look at. So say, for example, a terrazzo floor that we had figured as part of that additional 3 million, we could take that to a less expensive floor like the floor here. We can, another thing we did at the 4-5 was the interior walls that were not structural. We made them drywall, like the wall behind you, as opposed to a block wall. That's there. There's other things, again, that you've added money for, so like the metal roof is a premium. You could go to a less expensive membrane roof like what's on here or what's on the current middle school, or the renovated high school. And so different things like that. And again, from our other projects, there's been a long list of things, and many of those things we can bid as alternates. So if the bids come in favorably, if there's a contractor that's hungry for work, and they can reduce some of their prices, and we can accept some alternates. So that's a strategy that we also do. But again, those are all what we typically do when we're at this stage where we're a little bit over budget, not 25 or 30%.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember too, we're at a schematic design stage, so it's very early. Like, there's a good amount of that budget that is, so you make your contingencies bigger at this stage because the design's still being developed. We still haven't went through all the aspects of the design, that it just continues to get more developed. So that design contingency comes down as we get into the design development and get closer to construction documents. So some of these alternates is a great way to set aside and see how things transpire as we get further in design. As we're getting further in, that design contingency comes down. Maybe we see some changes in the market that helps a little bit. I don't see dramatic changes, but there could be some things that maybe stabilize hopefully in coming months, or come down a little bit. But Just reminding you, we're early on, so we're just looking to move forward into that next phase. But there's definitely more challenges than we typically see right now, just with what's going on in the market.
So, well, do you guys have any questions right now before I keep going? So basically, we're going to continue having conversations on our end and working, Rick and I and Bob and Governor Miller, and talking about what we can, reduce. But as they're stating, it's not going to be anywhere near what we cannot pay $1 million more for building. That's not feasible. It just cannot happen. So we're going to have to look at what are our options. What can we do? So as we've talked about, what viable options are there. None of them are great, but I think there are things that all of the board needs to kind of think about, and we probably need to come back next month and continue some conversation once we continue working, on the other side. So, option one would be to consider taking the additional $5 million that's allocated for Pataskala and moving it towards this new elementary. So we might be able to get closer, knocking off some of it to reach the $8 million with the addition of the 5. So option one. Option two would be to build it smaller, to not build it to house the extra classrooms. I will tell you that we have already added at the elementary, just in our gen ed classrooms, 1 additional this year, with the anticipation that we're holding back an FTE for the addition of 2. So right now we are sitting with 4 open classrooms spaces between all 3 of our elementaries. So it is an option, and Governor Miller would tell you that's the one way you can cut substantial costs, is by making the building smaller. I would be very concerned if 2 years from now, when it opens up, we're at capacity. So it's an idea, because it definitely will cut costs. Another option is, none of these are great options, but another option would be we wait. We wait to see if things change how they are currently. Maybe that works. Maybe prices go down, things get better, and maybe it doesn't, and we're sitting here having the same conversation a year later. I don't know, but as Rick and I have talked with them and the whole team, these are the best 3 viable, fiscally responsible options that we can present, that we have to present and come up with. I don't know if you want to add to that, Rick, or?
No, exactly what we talked about. I mean, did you have a chance to look at how many classrooms we would have to reduce to get $8 million?
To make up the entire would be 16 classrooms.
Oh my
Would be
gosh. We can't do that.
half of what we have planned, so.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's substantial.
I'm personally not a fan of reducing classrooms at all.
We're
with
not gonna
that
have-
chart we
no,
just
right.
saw.
Yeah, with what he,
Right.
so the allocating the 5 million, that is in fact the 5 million that was to be used to renovate Pataskala, correct?
Yeah, we'd have to delay renovation to a bond issue, do a bond issue for renovation and maybe a new building at the same time. Because we're going to need more buildings. There is no, just sitting in one and done, build this new K3.
No.
We're probably going to need a new building within 5 years or so,
Yeah,
if all this hits.
We're out of, we don't have additional classroom space after next year at the high school. They're all taken. I mean, we're out of room at the high school alone. So we'll see how the middle school looks when we move in. But yeah, if we continue to grow at the rate we're growing and adding elementary every year, and this year we added, just by growth, 3 teachers at the middle school. They probably could have used a little bit more, but we only had 9 FTE allocated. And we added 3 art, music, and PE as well to elementary. Cooperative Strategies is updating right now our growth study and our enrollment, which they'll continue to do annually. I anticipate being able to share that with you at the May board meeting. So, that's going to be something we have to continue to do, and then probably really start heavily talking about next steps for the district in general.
Yeah.
Just for curiosity's sake, I know this kind of related, but kind of isn't. Our kindergarten numbers, are we?
Kindergarten, well, we think people are just very on top of things this year, and that's why the numbers are really high.
Okay.
So they are high. If
That's kind of an indicator of
Yeah.
what's to come.
yeah,
That's
I
why
think
I
we're
was
at about 308, right around 300 somewhere. We average around 85 to 100 in the summer months. So
Oh my God.
So you're talking over 4.
400.
if it continues at the pace it's going,
Well, just taking, if we're at 3, and just taking the average what we get over the summer,
correct.
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
eighth grade being the biggest class.
I think this is probably, when Cooperative Charities did their growth study, I think the COVID messed a lot of things up with the kindergarten. And so I think their prediction became almost a year off for the kindergarten class. So we'll see how it aligns this year, but that's what I think happened.
Do you think there may be a lot of like kids that would have been kindergarten this year
I
that
do.
mom and dad just
I wonder.
waited? Yeah.
I wonder if we looked at the data, yeah. So we're ahead of kindergarten where we have been on pace. I was
Okay.
gonna talk about that in my superintendent update, so that's where we're at. No, it's okay, it doesn't matter now or then. So that's where we're at. Those are the best three options as,
We're not asking you to make a decision tonight. We
Yeah, no.
wanted to get the information to you, get it out to the public. $8 million, you know, I think new K3, the new 4 or 5, we maybe $2 million over. We started out maybe 3. And we ended up adding $2 million to that building. We couldn't have built it that size. It was $8 million more. So either we gotta shrink it or we gotta find more money. You know, it's gotta be a combination of both those two.
Well, my thoughts are, this doesn't surprise me. With our economy the way it's going, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that we're gonna be over budget. But looking at the numbers down the road, we've gotta figure a way to keep it where we're planning, I think, to keep up with the numbers. Is what, if we proceed as planned, Rick, is there another way to get more money besides Pataskla? Can we put something on the,
I mean, you could always do a ballot issue if you wanted to get the money. She won't be bringing it up, but you know, we could do a cops. We could do a cops issuance out of the general fund and get the money now and pay it back. But you're hitting the general fund for probably $500,000 or more a year for 20 years, 25 years. You know,
I
so
just
that's a big if. You know, that could be hitting the general fund. You know, obviously if.
the
That's,
funding
you know.
formula is too unknown. We don't know what's coming. I mean, we can't afford, we have to hire staff. We can't afford to reduce staff when 85% of your budget comes from that. That's not, to me, we're starting to really put us in a place where we could be strained if we get to that place, or again, the funding formula is so unstable and we don't know what 2 years out brings. So if we don't get, you know, at least what we're getting now and or more funding, and we keep growing, you know, that would be, which is why I told Rick, I don't love that option, because I feel like we're starting to put a lot of debt and take a lot out from the general fund, which could really put us at a bad position, and we have to have staff.
And I'm not comfortable with any more
Yeah.
PIs pretty well eat up. You know, we've eaten up a lot of the JED with this last COPS issuance. And, you know, we're starting getting more JED revenue in as some of these buildings keep coming up. But other than using the general fund, I have no other source of revenue I could think of other than, you know, Pataskla. Unfortunately.
Well-
Again, a bond issue is an option. I think Mr. Janelle had mentioned putting a permanent PI on, and we can issue TANs out of it. But again, that's going back to the voters and asking for more money.
Which is going to be very difficult when we're not done with our current building project.
I don't disagree whatsoever.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying it out loud.
what will not doing Pataskla do to our community? I mean, will that go over?
I mean,
I'm just-
we have to do Pataskla. We
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
We can't do it, we can't
Well,
leave it forever,
that's
you know.
sort of why I'm asking.
Yeah.
If we don't do Pataskla, what would be the community thoughts on that?
Well, we're eventually going to have to do a bond again at some point, I'm assuming. You could always figure in that money then, and maybe even more. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and
But-
if the funding formula changes, there are things that could change. There are things they're variables that we don't know. That's the issue. You know, if that changes, or you know, again, we're going to be getting solar panel money, but you know, a little shy of $500,000 a year is not $5 million. So
Right.
that's not something that's going to be replaceable for Pataskla in 1 year overnight. So, you know, over time, we can make up for that if it takes a while for the community to support another bond, but it's not going to be at the same timeline that we set, that we told the community. So that That's correct. So it's probably something that everyone needs to kind of think about, and maybe we can talk more about it in small group and have some committees and get together and have conversations, and we'll continue to work with Governor Miller and bring back some suggestions and some ways to shave it a little bit, but the bottom line is we're going to have to make a decision what we're going to do.
Well, we can't stop growth, I know that. That's here to stay, and it's gonna keep coming, so I think we have to do what we have to do to keep up with that growth, and if it means going over budget, then we have to do whatever we have to do to make that happen. That's just reality of it. And if the community won't support it, then we go from there, but I think hopefully if we present it correctly to the community, they'll support us again.
And I also think it'll probably be a no, but I also think we could make an ask to our elected officials at the state. You know, with Intel coming and whatnot, are they just expecting
Right.
all the local school districts to just manage this? I mean, to me, they're going to have to throw more money at schools.
Right now, their commitment currently is to higher ed.
Well, and that's
Is
fantastic.
to what?
Higher education, yeah.
That's
Yeah, the
fantastic.
colleges.
Yep.
But to get to higher ed, they have to come through us.
Oh, trust me, we all know.
With the value engineering, is there a percentage you can figure that we might be? I mean, you know, do you think we can get 10% out of that? Does that make sense to you? See what I'm asking? You know, do you think we can get down to 6.5 million over budget if we value engineered enough out of it
I think
without?
that's reasonable.
Yeah. Okay.
We're not gonna, it's gonna be a combination of things to
Yeah.
make up the 8. but
Yeah. Right.
It's reasonable to think we could cut 1.5, 2 million through VE.
Yeah. Okay. That's what. Okay. That's what I wondered. Is, you know, without changing the size of the building, but getting materials and things like that, how much? What kind of value do you think we could get? Okay.
The building had to get smaller, but hopefully none of the classrooms will be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. The square.
Yeah.
I know the some of the square
Right.
footage
We'll have to
kind of
come down
things,
some,
the
yeah.
volume. I understand that stuff,
Yeah.
but.
Does have anything else for Kurt?
No. Thank you.
Right, anyways?
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, 9B, we're back to non-transport zones.
This is the meeting that just keeps on getting.
Yes.
I need a motion to approve, or, well, I need the motion, I think.
Yeah. Motion to approve non-transport zones. Yes? Is that what we want to do first?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I motion to approve the non-transport zones, and see if it gets seconded. But add the half-mile radius for the Etna school.
I will second that.
Discussion.
After what we just heard.
It's going to happen eventually.
They're going to get bigger. They're going
They're
to,
gonna get bigger.
yeah.
Half-mile is gonna be, we'll be talking about,
Yes.
remember when?
That will be our, you're right.
Remember when it was only a half a mile?
The question is, how fast are they going to get bigger, right?
Right?
Well, and there's, well, yeah, I mean, that's, who knows?
Well, I was just writing down.
It's almost like a Band-Aid at this
Yeah.
point, like,
I got a email notification for Altville getting a development roughly 200. York, that development was roughly 200. The golf course off of Broad Street, 99.
these are all in addition to what we saw on Ryan's thing?
Yeah, those aren't on.
Yes.
Wow.
Mr. Miller's going to be at the Etna Township House tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's right.
My, did we second that yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, it's been a long meeting.
It really hasn't.
It hasn't, yeah, it just feels,
So if we do the half-mile circle here, would you propose extending that red line then out to like the corner of Runkle and Trail East? Or are you proposing keeping it the way it is for now?
I'm proposing extending it out to Runkle and Trail East, yes.
But not in the middle of a house.
Not in the middle of the house, right. I'm envisioning that Trail East would go up to the pond. That's what it would do.
Just including the entire Cumberland Trails development is what you're saying.
No.
Well, not that outside part, outside of the half mile. You're not
Yeah.
suggesting
Right.
that.
This
Right.
part, no.
Okay.
So it'd be a natural break where Trail East meets Runkle.
See,
Yes.
that
That's probably where stop would be.
I would, I feel like if we're not gonna leave the line where it is, we may as well put everything in. Because of the whole, I'm just gonna walk over here and get on the bus.
Right.
But if that's what people do, that's what people do. We can't control people's.
Okay. Then I'm fine with this.
I do like having the standard of half mile.
Then you have this one problem on Glen Crossing.
Yep.
Okay.
So we say plus or minus or a
Yeah,
little bit, or?
are we really gonna,
We're gonna send a bus all the way back there to
into
get
there?
like those 10 houses.
Yeah,
The
if
little
you're-
white dot could have been moved over top of Edna a little more. They probably could have captured that.
That's
Yeah.
what she was trying to.
That's what I was trying to do.
We probably
I was
that's-
trying
we
to
could
move
do
the
that.
dot just a little bit to get those houses
If
in
you're
there.
adding this in, I think we should add in that back little loop because we're
Okay.
talking
I think so too.
feet.
Well, and
with
I
the
think
dot
there's
would-
still work to be done here. This, just south, the apartments that I lived in when we were building our home, there's no reason, other than there's not a crosswalk there, that those kids couldn't walk. And I feel like we need to work with we need to talk to Aetna about getting a crosswalk there,
Yeah,
because
we'd like to add one there as well as down on the other side.
Trail
around
West.
that.
So
So if we
I,
could add a sidewalk there and there, that would be huge.
So when we say we're going to make it half-mile circle for Etna, are we truly making this entire thing or just on the one side? So now Trails West is in a non-transport zone?
I thought that was staying the way it is, not
Because they don't have
because
sidewalks.
they don't have a sidewalk.
Okay. So we really aren't going with the half-mile as a standard?
Right.
Just on the one
Roughly.
side?
Right.
Okay.
Well, and we really can't use that language anyways because of Pataskala.
Of
We
that-
technically don't go a half mile
Right.
because we
Because of
don't
the
cross
railroad. Because of the railroad
tracks.
Yeah, she said Edna only, though. She mentioned half mile Edna
Well, I
only.
know, but I feel like if we're gonna use that, we need to be careful of the language we
can't-
Okay.
use, so we're not confusing to
Exactly.
parents.
So so I will amend my motion to say, motion to approve, but we extend to Trail East to the pond. Is that correct? Leave out the half mile thing? Huh?
Yeah. Does it need re-seconded?
If she's okay with the change, yeah.
I'm not sure I understand.
So I'm saying all of this should be included.
Yeah. I thought you were saying I thought the pond was out
Oh,
here.
okay, no, no, within the circle. I won't
Yeah.
even use half mile, within the circle.
Any other
So-
discussion?
Just within the half mile circle, though?
Yeah.
Not all the way
Just
out.
within the circle on that
On
side?
Trail East,
On that
yes, on
Trail
that
East
side.
and Runkle.
My only other concern, although I think it could be remedied, I was under the impression that it was going to be presented tonight, and then Ryan would be here at the next meeting if parents wanted to come, and then we were voting on it at the next meeting. I didn't realize we were voting on it tonight.
Well, we can wait, but I feel like the longer we wait, the longer we
Because the
delay
only other,
communicating with parents.
so when was this put on the agenda? That, I guess, is,
I think it's been there for a
It
while.
was on there,
Yeah,
the original
last week.
version.
No,
I
it was
got.
Friday.
the actual motion itself was added this afternoon.
Oh.
Because I
Yeah,
was
I
talking
thought-
to her about this
I thought it was
presentation, but
included.
I said there's no action. She goes, well, they need it because we want to get started, so that's why we added it this afternoon. And since it's already business items, we're allowed to add it that time.
right.
So it was
I
just
mean-
this afternoon.
I guess my thought with bringing Ryan next month would be for any additional questions that came up or if the community had questions. But the reality is I don't think, yes, people are not going to be happy. I understand that, but this is the unfortunate reality of where we're at. There's a nationwide bus driver shortage. We're fortunate to even have as many drivers as we have and be doing better than the entire county as a whole. We are a rapidly growing school district, and we just cannot continue to do transportation how we've always done it. So by waiting, for me, I feel like we're just postponing the inevitable, because yes, parents will be upset. I anticipate we'll have to field myself, and the team will have to field a lot of phone calls, but this is what we have to do. We have to do this, or we're not going to be able to, we're going to be double routing, and kids aren't going to be getting to school on time, and that is what's going to happen, and I know parents would not be happy about that either. So for me, I'm thinking inform them, educate them, help them understand, have those conversations, continue having them, let them know what's going on, communicate. So although they may not like it, they'll eventually hopefully understand and make plans for August, is
So
what I was
if
thinking.
we approve this tonight, then these maps that we're looking at will be on the website for parents to see?
Maps, and will also be, every individual parent that's impacted will be getting emails. That's how it will start.
Okay.
Too. Yeah, because we want to individually reach people. I don't want to rely on people having to just go to the website to visit things. I want them to hear from us as a district.
Could we also put Mr. Brown's entire slideshow on for people to go view? Because I think some of the points he made as to the whys are really important.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
Instead of just
Yeah, and
showing
maybe
maps.
we'll have, Tanya's really good at being very creative with things. Maybe she can help with a couple of, instead of people having to wean through a million presentations, some snapshots of things and keep pumping it out there to educate people. The maps on the website, and then the individualized communication. That way we're hitting people in a lot of different ways. Because what we don't want to happen is I don't want August to roll around and people are surprised.
Right.
That would be
Really bad.
Yeah,
Right, no, that,
that would not be good.
okay.
So would this red line come all the way over here then?
No,
Is
it
that-
would come right here, to right here at the corner.
Oh, I thought you were you're not
No.
extending it over into
They
the,
want to keep it within a half a mile.
oh, okay.
I really don't like splitting in the middle of a street.
Well, you could do right at that, the trail east and Runkle, right at the
Corner
where they
here.
meet, intersect, yeah, the corner. That's what I was thinking we were doing.
Yep.
Seemed like a natural divide.
If that's okay. I mean, I still think it's, I don't know.
I mean, it's not perfect, and like Ryan said, we're going to have to continue
We're
to
going to have to
revisit it every
continue.
year.
That's why I'm like.
Anyways, so maybe this is a step in the right direction, and then we'll continue to look at growth, transportation, buses,
Okay.
how rapidly certain neighborhoods, and if what Deb is saying is true, and Harrison is about to blow up,
Yes.
that's all gonna be busing, that's far. I mean, it's
Yeah.
compared to,
Right.
there's gonna
There
be
is no
half a mile.
non-transport zone for any of those.
Yeah, so that's a whole different,
Just have to see how it
yeah.
plays out. I
Okay.
think it'll, and then you might have to make a different decision come second 9 weeks.
And we've communicated clearly to our transportation department and our bus drivers that this is not, we're not getting rid of any of them.
Oh, no, we cannot afford to get rid of bus driver.
We're keeping every
fact-
single one of you.
No,
We're only saving, what did we say, like
Six buses.
six routes?
Six routes.
Yeah, which will be, allocated to
That
other
we'll
neighborhoods
need
that
to
are growing.
add to
No,
go
no.
someplace else.
Yeah, nope, we cannot
Stay
afford
here,
to
stay here.
use a bus
I mean,
driver.
I'm saying if you wanted to start a daycare business that had one of those little buses, you'd probably make a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Anyway, any other discussions?
I could do that. I live in a non-transport zone.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Mr. Jones?
All right. Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes,
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. Motion passes. Can we do,
You can do the rest all together. if you
Yeah.
okay. So we have C through F left.
Motion to approve 9, C through F.
Second.
Any discussion on any of these?
Real quick, the AEP easement, this is for the athletic facility, the west is to get access into, so our new tennis courts, softball fields, but also it's a little corner of Smoke Road, because right now they have easement up to about where the new intermediate school is, but they want the rest up to the next property line. In exchange, they reduced our price by $7,500 and what it's going to cost to do the easement, the pool electric over for the athletic buildings that we're putting up, the tennis court. So I think there's a new 3-phase wire they want to put in for a housing complex. So that's what the easement's for. And then Gar Miller, this is a proposal to do the next step, and that's basically the CMR for the baseball field and bleachers project, and this is the getting started on that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Ziny,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. Item 10, treasurer's items.
Motion to approve 10A and B, A with thank yous.
Second.
Discussion?
Just all routine.
Yes, definitely thank yous to all of our
Yes.
donations. Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Ziny,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. Item 11, superintendent's comments.
So I have two things that I didn't intertwine earlier to speak of. I wanted to update you on the baseball field. So work did start Tuesday afternoon. They went out Tuesday morning they were hoping to start, but given the conditions of Monday's weather, again, anyways, they couldn't start till the afternoon. They were able to work Tuesday afternoon and yesterday, obviously today again. The rain put a damper on that, but it looks to be between tomorrow and hopefully Monday, they'll be able to wrap up the project. And we did have a baseball game this week at home, a real one, a varsity game, not the JV, not using the outfield. So a legitimate baseball game on our first home game on the field for varsity. So hopefully they'll wrap that up between tomorrow and Monday. So I wanted to share that. And then just kind of a heads up for what's to come. Next month I anticipate bringing an addendum or an alteration to the calendar for next year. We've been having lots of conversations and waiting as long as we possibly can for a proposal for when we can move into the new, the renovated middle school, as well as Kirkersville into the old middle school. So we're getting closer on some dates. What I don't want to do is present, we're not going to be in school these days, we'll be moving, and then have to go back to the parents and say, okay, never mind, that's not what's happening, because that's really hard when you're arranging childcare and other issues. So it's looking like October at some point. We will move the middle school into the renovated middle school, and then we are planning on waiting and doing a December transition for Kirkersville. They're not going to start anyways. There's no hurry. That will give us time to get some things prepared and ready and make sure we're ready for K through 3 between the middle school moving out and Kirk coming in. And then that will put Kirkersville in the middle school for a year and a half while their building is renovated. The December extended break also allows ample time for movement and will help out the elementary parents. So I'll bring specific dates back next month. I've been just trying to wait as long as possible to make sure we're getting accurate updates from Robertson. So that's just a little bit of an update, and then hopefully next month we can vote on an adjusted calendar and make sure our families see that so they know what's happening next year. And that's it. I was going to talk about enrollment, but we talked about that, so good to go.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Item 12, request to speak on non-agenda items, Teamsters and Southwest Licking Education Association. Seeing no one, we move to item 13, motion to adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Ziny,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes. That motion passes. We are adjourned to 8:29.